Thank you. So, mic check, all working? Okay. So, wonderful good morning. Just a tad bit of time left for the good afternoon. So, my name is Aditi, and I'll be talking about the Azure Cloud Provisioning via Foreman. So, let's introduce a bit about myself. So, I'm a software engineer working at Red Hat. I'm based out of Pune, India. I have been an open source enthusiast since my early college days, and I continue to follow that tradition while being in Red Hat. Then I have been a member of the Foreman community now over a year. It will be almost 2 years now. And if you want to reach out to me via GitHub, then you can use this nick, Puntamb, or you can also communicate to me via Freenode IRC with these nicks. So let me just give you a brief agenda, what we'll cover in this talk. So now I'll not follow a lot of what is Foreman and how it works, because now everyone is aware of what it does and what all its primary use cases. But still, I'll give a brief in a nutshell of Foreman. How can you provision using Foreman? And typically, this talk will focus on cloud provisioning and Azure Cloud as a cloud provider for provisioning via Foreman. We'll also take a look on the around the templates that we use for provisioning via provisioning on cloud. Then I'll give you a brief about what is Azure Resource Manager, and this will be followed by a demo. Hopefully the Wi-Fi works and supports me. So let me walk you through. So this is Foreman in a nutshell. Its primary use case is that it gives you an extensive capability to provision your hosts on different, on either bare metal or different cloud providers, private or public. Then, as we have already seen how Ansible and Salt are integrated, so we can now we can now establish that it's extensively also used for configuration management, and followed by the monitoring of the health of your hosts which you create via Foreman. So this is how you actually provision, or these are the key aspects that are included in, that are involved in provisioning with Foreman. So you have network-based provisioning typically handled via Pixie. So you install the operating system. So these are some primary steps which we follow, just to give you a glimpse that these are the steps that we follow for provisioning, be it network-based or image-based. So we install the OS. We have to make certain changes or configurations to the operating system that we would like to select. Then it does build your virtual machine on top of this operating system configuration that you select. You can also provide the network configurations or interface configurations. Now this depends on the cloud provider or any provider that you use to provision your hosts, that what sort of functionalities do they provide or do they offer. You can also create, as I already mentioned, public-private cloud instances. There is a very flexible yet strong templating engine that Foreman has, and you can configure your operating systems or settings or the configs as per your requirement. Now, there is something known as compute resources, which I think almost everyone knows now, but just to give you a brief, that the compute resources are nothing but the providers that we use to provision our hosts. So that compute resource can either be any virtualization environment or cloud platform, or it can be bare metal as well. And compute profiles are nothing but some default settings that you can assign to your host for a selected compute resource that you wish to provision your host on. So this is a typical Foreman architecture diagram. You can also find it on our website, theforeman.org. And this usually is the communication architecture, that how Foreman is communicating with all other components. So typically we are based, our talk is primarily focused in this side where the compute resources are located and how Foreman is trying to communicate with these compute resources or these providers. It's via certain libraries or API calls that we make so that the communication is possible here. So let me give you a glimpse of how cloud provisioning happens here. So as I already mentioned that we call the virtualization or cloud providers, they are referred to as compute resources in Foreman. And these capabilities vary with the type of compute resource that you select. So you can compare different cloud providers and the capabilities would differ too. So Azure might have some different capabilities than Google Compute Engine or AWS for that matter. So typically, if you're talking about public cloud, we are more focused on image-based provisioning, since the networks or the subnetworks are actually coming from the cloud provider. We are using those networks from the cloud providers to provision our VMs. So we usually follow the image-based provisioning there. Selection, you can select this compute resource which you are creating while actually creating a host in Foreman. And the host, which is now this means that the host present in, once you create the host in, you have created an instance in the cloud environment, it gets associated in Foreman, with Foreman, and as long as that host is present in Foreman's database, it will be associated. So that's nothing but the life cycle of a Foreman host. So I'll be showing this to you in my demo, but still, how you can configure a compute resource is nothing but you can give the credentials in creation of compute resource. Now again, this depends on the type of cloud or any provider that you use, that what sort of credentials it requires, and this actually enables you to connect to that cloud provider and get the you can confirm this connectivity via the test connection option that we have. And also, as I already mentioned, we quite follow the image-based provisioning while creating, provisioning in public cloud environments. So we also do create a Foreman image, which is nothing but the details are fetched from the provider image that we have, and thereby we can actually get the host details through that image. So this is typically the, these are two types of templates that that we use for image-based provisioning, or maybe in the public cloud you can say that we have the finish and the user data template. So in case of finish template, the actual SSH calls are made, and in case of user data, you can the image that you have that is listed under any specific cloud provider, if it has the cloud in its support, or if you want to enable it via Foreman, you can use the user data template to continue your provisioning, the post-install script. So this is an architecture of a finish template, and by default it is logged, but you can clone it and make your own changes in that template as per your requirements. So that was a quick glimpse of how Foreman provisioning happens. And now, in case of Azure Resource Manager, so earlier Foreman did support Azure, but it was the version 1, API v1 of Azure, which is no longer very actively continued. So and also it has been quite, I should say, quite deprecated now. But to support the enhanced version of Azure, which is nothing but the resource manager, so we have recently integrated Azure RM, or Azure Resource Manager, with Foreman, which is nothing but the API v2 of Azure. So the basic or the very primary difference in Azure v1 and Azure Resource Manager is that any entity, any virtual machine, any other necessary or the required object, let's say the network or the IPs or the disks, all are treated as a resource. And all these are combined under a resource group. So you can have different number of resource groups under which you will have different resources. So this actually gives you I can say a better structured and organized format for your virtual machines or any other, let's say, network interface or disk objects. So this can be classified under any specific region that you would like to provision your machines into, or you can have different resource groups in which which can either be in same location or in different locations, or again, it's based on the access also, that if you would like to continue giving access to other people, so you can also provision in the same resource group, or if you want to restrict some access, you can change the resource groups as well. So this is a typical architecture of the resource manager, wherein we are considered right now with the virtual machine, how the Azure Resource Manager actually handles the virtual machines. So which includes other services also, but we are right now dealing with the virtual machine as well as the associated objects with it. So the REST clients or the Azure portal or the other services, as you can see, so they all communicate to the Azure SDKs. And in Foreman, we have also integrated the Azure Resource Manager via its SDK, and which is nothing but the Azure SDK for Ruby. And earlier, it had the fog Azure dependency, but due to the version lagging and the downgraded version, so we had to switch to the SDK, and I think, yeah, it's performing pretty well. I'll demo that. And that's about the Azure Resource Manager, how it works, and what exactly is the motto of Azure RM. So I think it's demo time. I'll quickly. So I'll just show you the. Okay. So if I choose Azure Resource Manager, these are the 4 mandatory credentials that you need to provide. So client ID, client secret, subscription ID, tenant ID. So once you have the subscription, once you have subscribed to Azure RM, you can derive these credentials through, let me, yeah. So this is actually a guide for you to, or for users, which is present in the documentation of Foreman Azure RM as well. So you can actually create these credentials once you are subscribed to the Azure Resource Manager. So, and then you select the region where you would like your VMs to be. So there are some few regions which we have currently enabled. And once you have created with the correct credentials, you can go to check the connectivity via test connection, and it would give you the results whether or not your connection has been successfully established or not. So that's about the compute resource creation. So I have a few created already, and I have images here. Wi-Fi. Okay. But the idea behind images is that we create the Foreman image, which are stored in Foreman's database, and the actual image from where it fetches the data is listed under the cloud provider. So here in this case, Azure's images, either public or any custom image. So currently we do not support custom image, or there is a concept called shared image gallery in Azure. So since this is the first release of Foreman Azure RM, we have the privilege or the feature only of public images right now. So I think.
Let me connect it to another Wi-Fi.
Or maybe.
That's direct mobile connection.
Okay.
Please try again.
It's okay. I'll show that later.
Yeah, but
Okay. Okay, I can show the images later maybe. Meanwhile, I'll just walk you through the host creation. So this is a typical hosts page of Foreman. So here you can select the compute resource which you would like to provision your machine on. So let's say my compute resource is selected. Wi-Fi, yeah. So this actually opens up the virtual machine tab for me. And as I mentioned about the resource group earlier, so I have a list of resource groups here, but the one that I have access to, I'll select that. Now, this VM size option is actually, this comes from Azure directly. How? It's dependent on the region that you select while creating the compute resource. So there are different VM sizes as per the locations. So let's say, now this compute resource that I had selected is from the East US region. So I'll get a list of those VMs which are only those VM sizes which are present in the East US. So you might get a different list if you select any other region, say West Europe or Central US, etc. So let's say I select B1LS. You have to give the username. Now it's up to you. You give the password or SSH key, how you would like to log into your VM. Let me give password. So you also have the option of a custom script command if you would like to give any command or run any script while your VM is being created. So at the time of provisioning, you can also provide the script command. For Wi-Fi reasons, right now I'll not put extra input. So yeah, so this is the image actually, which is associated with my operating system that I had selected. Now it's okay if you would like to give the root password or not. It's totally up to you. This would be the root password of the VM that you're creating. And so this is these are the subnets which are coming from Azure SDK. So based on my region and my subscription, these are few subnets out of which I only have access to my subnet. Let's say dynamic IP I would like to give, and a sample domain. Okay. This is done. Yep. Yep. Let's click submit. Yes, so I think this is going to take a bit longer time. But this is how we provision hosts on Azure RM. So meanwhile, you can go ahead, ask any questions if you have or any comments you have. So till the time we can see it's being provisioned. So. Just okay, yeah, sure.
Two questions.
Sure.
First, the script which is executed during provisioning, isn't this normally a Finnish template?
Script, do you mean the command script that I mentioned?
Yes.
Okay, so that is typically the Cloud Init kind of script, if you have support to Cloud Init or
I see.
in addition to your post-install script, which is nothing but the Finnish template, as you mentioned. So in Azure, you can give Cloud Init scripts or run a command if you would like to. And that's nothing but the script command, the provision that they have given. So even if you go to the Azure portal, you can see that you can provide the command script or the file that if you would like to execute any file. So you can provide that while creating a VM additionally.
Okay. And second question is regarding the library which is used to integrate with Azure. I guess it's also from Microsoft. How stable is that?
You mean the newer library
Yes.
that has been?
How stable is that?
Okay, so
Ruby library.
Yes, it's the Azure library, Azure SDK library for Ruby, and it's quite stable. I mean, they have time to time releases of all the bug fixes if at all come up. So yeah, I mean that's in terms of stability, it's quite reliable.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Thank you.
Just out of interest, who's using Azure in some case? Or thinking about using Azure? I'm still skeptical about Microsoft.
I think this won't be too skeptical to use.
Too sad, but I'm not sure what the Wi-Fi problem is.
Yeah, sure.
So you made the design decision to remove the fog library completely
For
and
Azure?
go to the SDK library, single SDK library. Is there any reason, technical reason to do that, or is just a reason that you couldn't agree to the version numbering and dependencies with the fog maintainer?
Yeah, so we for Foreman now, fog 2.0 or the 2.x version has been applied now since quite a long time, and every fog has upgraded. Every other fog library has been upgraded to 2.x already, but I think Fog Azure RM uses 1.43 or 4.5, and the maintainers or the other team is, I think, not yet ready to upgrade to the 2.x or the latest version now. So it's if you see, there are a lot of glitches then to maintain or to balance between 2.x and 1.x. So yeah, that's the whole reason.
Okay. Do you plan to reintegrate the fog library at
For,
some point in time? Or?
I think I'm relying a bit on the SDK libraries, as I can maintain. Yeah. Keep asking questions. So yeah, I think it's quite stable as of now, and I can see this going further with the SDK library itself. So because we have a good and extensive support from the SDK library itself. Yeah. So and also this is the first release, so I am expecting a lot of refactoring work to be done later on code-wise. So even if there is something that works slower or maybe not very efficient, so we can always refactor, and pull requests are always welcome. So yeah. Any other questions?
One more question to fill the progress bar.
Any comments, any ideas anyone want to share? Okay, well, this will work. I know. Sorry. Yeah, I think it's almost there. Sorry?
Thank you very much for your great work.
So, have you been using...
One more question, almost done.
So, have you been using Azure RM?
Yes.
Azure RM. Okay. So, how have you used it earlier? Have you integrated it with Foreman?
We used the old version of Foreman Azure RM, or how it's
Okay,
called,
yeah.
and did some changes to make it work. And
Right.
so we were happy that you refactored it, have it completely rewritten, and it works nice, it seems. So thank you very much for doing all the work.
Thank you for using it. Okay, I think this would work. I won't take much time now. So, okay then. Thank you all. Thank you for
Okay.
listening.
Thank you, Aditi.
Thank you.